Good morning. So you talk about all the great leaders that you have worked with and worked for, and I kind of wonder sometimes, is the pressure on the leader to create the right environment, or is the pressure on the team to rise up to the leader's expectations?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Whose responsibility is it? Okay, I think it's up to the leader to set the culture, okay? But that culture cannot be forwarded unless you have amazing foot soldiers to carry out the day-to-day, okay? So it's incumbent onto both. When I played at Duke, and again, when I graduated, we set a record for the number of wins in a 4-year period. We were 131 and 15 in 4 years. All right, we didn't lose a lot. The ironic part about that was Coach K not once, ever said we have to win this game. The goal was not about wins and losses. It was always about standards. And he repeated the lesson of, if we played to the standard that we're capable of, and if we played to the standard of Duke basketball, guess what? Wins are a byproduct of that. And losses are a byproduct if we fail to those standards, all right? So that was the expectation, right? Now, I played for amazing senior leadership when I was a freshman. All right, guys like Steve Wojciechowski and Trajan Langdon and guys who taught me what it meant to be a Duke basketball player in a way that Coach K couldn't, right? And I'll never forget, we had these things called 17 across. It was a conditioning test. And I hated it. I'm not very fast, so I hated it. So it was 17 lengths of the basketball court in 1 minute, okay? And if one person doesn't make it, guess what? 60 more seconds to do it again. So like this used to give me sweats at night. I'm like, oh my gosh, 17 across. We used to do like 5 times. So I'm like, oh, 17 across. I hate this. So one day going to practice to run 17 across, I tell, as a freshman, I say to nobody in particular, man, I hate 17 across. And our senior captain, Steve Wojciechowski, turns around and says, you know what I hate? Losing. And turns around, and walks away. And I felt like this big. I felt this big. And I said, okay, this is what it means to be a Duke basketball player, the Duke man, right? So if Coach K would have said that, it would have meant something, but to have that come from my peer meant maybe more. And so what Coach K did is he set the culture from the top, but it was the senior leadership and the ownership that he gave the players that really makes it go every single day. And there was an internal peer pressure to play to that standard that was set up here every single day. And so when you have both of them, man, great things happen, all right? But you need both. You need both.
While the mic's traveling, I know you talked a bit earlier about some of the great insights that came from your work in analytics with the Heat. I'd like you to talk a little bit more about that because we've got some analytics students and faculty in the room.
Well, I have a very interesting history. I was the first Moneyball player in the NBA. Okay, so back in 2006, analytics were huge in baseball. Everyone's seen Moneyball and Billy Beane and Theo Epstein, and so Major League Baseball teams had robust analytics departments and data engineers. Well, no one was doing it in basketball, all right? Everyone's like, nerds can't win basketball games. Like, the same thing they're saying now. Like, you can't win basketball games on a spreadsheet. Yeah. And so it took a lot of courage for the owner of the Houston Rockets, a guy named Les Alexander, a former bond trader, was like, you know what? I think there's surplus here. So he invested in the Rockets were the first team to hire data scientists, build a data infrastructure, and to say, you know what? We're going to have analytics as an organizational philosophy. And so in one of their very first models, who popped as an amazing value as a player who is very, very cheap, but produces at outsized rate. Cheap labor, all right? Cheap, good labor. That's who I was. And so they traded for me in 2006. And at the time, I got traded for this first-round pick, a guy named Rudy Gay, who just looked the part, you know, like long, athletic, like strong, like scored a lot of points. And like, if I would have been there that night, they would have like thrown tomatoes at me, like, Battier, no, we're giving up this guy for Battier. But what Daryl Morey and Sam Hinkie knew is like, again, every team I was a part of won. When I was on the floor, every team I played on played at a championship level versus when I was off the floor. So when I got to Houston, I didn't know analytics, but I was intrigued about the different way to think about the game of basketball. And so I got to learn literally from like, you know, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi, the way to think about data as it pertained to basketball. And the way they taught me was actually like playing blackjack, right? So when you sit down at a blackjack table, you know, there's a book that tells you the optimal way of playing blackjack, right? So if you're dealt pocket aces, what do? You always split. Why? Does that guarantee success? No. But if you do that over the course of your time, you know, in the shoe or sitting down at the table, over the course of hours, you gain positive EV by splitting those aces every single time. You know? Do you ever say, oh, I'm gonna go YOLO, keep them together? No. You split them every single time, right? Trying to gain those little nuggets of EV wherever you can. Well, basketball is the same way. And so they taught me to look at every player that I guarded as a blackjack hand, okay? And so when I'm guarding Kobe Bryant, who's, you know, the greatest competitor that I've played against, I knew with the advanced use of the analytics in this new world, they can model out when you not only factor in makes and misses, which was the traditional way to look at how good a basketball player was, when you factor in turnovers and passes to teammates and their shots off that pass, the ability to draw fouls, those free throws off that play, okay? When he did right and baked in all those different outcomes, it was a 63% shot. But when he went left, and you factor in makes, misses, turnovers, free throws, drawn passes, turnovers, all those things, it was only a 42% shot. So you don't need to be a math major out of MIT to know if I'm guarding Kobe Bryant, I want him to do the 42% thing and not the 63% thing. Capiche? That makes sense? That's NBA analytics. And just like playing blackjack, do I want Kobe Bryant to go, you know, left 80% of the time and, you know, allow him to go to his right 20% of the time? No! I want him to go to his left every single time. Why? Because that creates points of value for me. Little nuggets of expected value. And guess what? Those all add up. As innocuous as it is, a left-hand drive was worth like, in that situation, it was worth like 0.2 points per play. All right? So, and I learned better than anybody in the entire game all the different trade-offs from every spot on the floor from every player. That was my skill. All right? I was not fast, but I could process information. And so my scouting reports were about 20 pages thick before a game. And I memorized every situation and can think about, okay, what's my best outcome here? Do I hit? Do I stay? Do I split? And after a while, it became pretty second nature. And over the course of my career, again, all those pieces of positive expectation add up. And I was able to have amazing success, but most people are like, how's this guy having success? It was splitting the aces every single time. And so I started to look at basketball as a math problem, not a sport. And I began to think about, you know, not only basketball, but my life is probabilistic. What gives me the best chance of success over the long run? And in this results-oriented world, it's very, very difficult because we all look to the result and we all jump to conclusions based on the results. And I became so obsessed with the process that if Kobe Bryant scored 50 points going to his left hand, you know, 9 out of 10 times, I was able to live with the results because the process was pure. The result you can't control. And so in life, you know, focus on giving yourself the best chance to win. Split the aces when you can, every time, right? And you'll be shocked at over the long run, over a large data sample, how much success you have. And it might be a surprise to everybody else, won't be a surprise to you.
Tells our students how important that stats class is.
That's right.
You think it's
Hugely.
Yeah.
Hugely. I mean, it's an amazing skill. I mean, I would make that mandatory.
Who knew it is required?